Our story begins and ends in fog. That's the only thing I know for sure about The Lighthouse. A story so steeped in lies that reality itself feels like an alibi. Both men lie so frequently to each other and themselves that there really is no way to know what's real and what's not. Very early on, the camera stops making any distinction between dream, hallucination, or deception. We all feel the same horror and hilarity, but when we try to think about the meaning of it all, it shifts fluidly from person to person, depending on who we believe at any given time. On the surface, the movie is about how isolation and suspicion unglues us, taking our two characters from here to here. But there is another liar on this island, quietly pulling the strings and forcing this professional relationship between a boss and employee to become very personal. Welcome to Acolytes of Horror, where we examine the horrors of life through the horrors of film. My name is Nathan, and tonight I'm scared of Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse and Deception. This movie is obsessed with the worship of work, how we should feel about working, especially when the work sucks. What kind of work we dream of doing versus the kind of work that we have to do to maybe get to do the work that we actually want to do. And most importantly, who gets to benefit from that work. There are actually two lights in the lighthouse. The one everyone is fighting over, the clean, beautiful one that drives them crazy, and the coal fire that takes its toll from those who tend it. The labor and the fruits of that labor. I love how much time this movie devotes to the repetitive, mind-numbing toil of work. Most workplace movies and TV shows skip over the actual work part, or at best they'll zoom through it with a quick montage. In The Lighthouse, that agony is everywhere. The film really slows down enough for us to feel not just the physical exhaustion of work, but also the bitterness magnified by boredom. Labor can exhaust you, but it's the hours that break you.
The conditions are not favorable. Doing the same thing over and over again, that wears on you. Your soul, sometimes you think, why am I doing this? You think about whether you have the stamina and the will to do this type of job.
The entire structure of the movie goes back and forth between working on the job, where Wake is king and Howard is dirt, to the dinner table, a symbol of equality and community, which doesn't really work out. At work, Wake wants to be the boss. At the table, Wake wants to be friends, which Howard rightly resists because friends have to be equals. And Wake always has to win, especially when it comes to the light.
See to your duties. The light is mine. I'm the keeper of the light, man, and I'll never let no man touch it. Don't concern yourself. The light belongs to me!
Instead of summarizing the plot of this movie, I'm going to list some of its major lies. The story is about new employee Ephraim Winslow, except, no, wait. Ephraim Winslow is actually Thomas Howard. The real Winslow died in a logging accident that Howard probably could have stopped. Howard took his identity to try and get a fresh start.
How else am I going to find respectable work?
The other character is sailor-turned-wickie Thomas Wake. He walks with a limp, which he got from...
I broke me leg and banged myself all up.
Right, so yeah.
So we ate upon the grass, and 'twas that scurvy what left me locked ever since.
Wait a minute. The fact that he seems to be telling such a big lie about such a small thing calls into question everything else he's ever said about his life. Has he ever even lived at sea? Wake vaguely claims that his former partner died in some madness-related incident, but Howard later finds his decapitated head in one of Wake's lobster traps. Or maybe he imagined it. A possible clue being that the head is missing the same eye as the one-eyed seagull that constantly tormented Howard until he brutally killed it. But that could just mean that Wake's superstition about seagulls carrying the souls of dead sailors is true, and the poor guy has now been killed by both men. After the tender boat fails to arrive because of a storm, Wake tells Howard that weeks have passed since then, whereas Howard insists that it's only been a day.
It's only been one day.
Weeks, Winslow, weeks.
Is Howard losing his mind, or is Wake trying to get him to doubt his own perceptions to make him easier to control? Howard eventually tries to escape the island on their dory, but Wake destroys it with an axe. Later, Wake claims that Howard is the one who destroyed the dory.
And I knew you was mad when you smashed up that lifeboat just now and chasing me with an axe trying to kill old Tom.
From the very beginning, both men resist even the audience's curiosity. The first shot we ever see of them is the back of their heads. And our first proper introduction is this shot that has the formality of two men getting their portrait painted. It's the only shot in the movie where they seem respectable, even dapper. But there's also something confrontational about it, right? As if they're warning us not to get too close. Which is fitting because Wake gives Howard the same warning very shortly afterwards. This is what we in the critical analysis business call a power fart. It's an act of dominance, right? The first real choice we see Wake make is literally to fart in his new assistant's face. Immediately afterwards, Howard makes his first choice of the movie, hiding the mermaid charm he finds in his bed. Before the light is even introduced, we have this dynamic of dominance leading to distrust. Wake makes a big deal out of trying to force Howard to toast with him, but Howard doesn't want to drink on the job. According to the manual, it's not allowed. He tries to compromise by drinking water instead, and for a moment, you think Wake is just gonna let him have this one. Maybe he even respects Howard for standing up for himself. But then Wake always has to win.
Mine!
Always. After winning this time, he shifts into boss mode and starts listing all of Howard's duties very sternly. This little moment right here always gets me.
Yes, sir. Aye, sir.
Aye, sir.
See, Thomas Howard has this thing about being treated like a dog.
You lying dog.
He's been toiling in awful, degrading jobs his whole life. And this is the moment where he's realizing that this will be yet another one. A lot of people seem to think that the extended isolation is what makes Howard crazy, but he chose to work on an island. And before that, he worked out in the woods. There's nothing to suggest that Howard wants to be around people at all. What sets him off is being stuck with Wake, who manipulates and controls his every move.
Sometime soon I'll raise my own roof. Somewhere up country. No one to tell me what for. And that's all.
I love that quote so much because it feels like a more accurate revision of the American dream. The Lighthouse takes place during what Mark Twain called the Gilded Age. a time marked by income inequality running rampant through America due to corporate influence in the political system. Sounds familiar, I know. Just like many Americans today, Howard doesn't dare to dream of a life of prosperity. He just wants to be left alone. He's tired of being treated like an animal.
And that's all.
The script even describes Howard as looking like a dog that's been beaten and caged too many times. Being called a dog is the quickest way to set him off, which Wake does to his doom.
Ye lying dog. How dare ye contradict me, you dog? You're a dog. A filthy dog. A dog!
At the end, when Howard takes control, this is the most vicious punishment he can think of.
Now you get in there, where you belong. You do as I say, dog. There's my good lad.
Okay, so it's starting to become more clear in the fog, right? The light represents power, right? I mean, I think we kind of knew that. So the power to do what? Well, what did Wake's last partner think it did?
He believed that there was some enchantment in the light. Salvation, said he.
Salvation is a funny way to describe something that definitely got him killed, whether by murder or madness, and that idea starts to take root in Howard as well. And given how jealously Wake guards the light, maybe he agrees, but if the light is the power of salvation and Wake has exclusive access to the light, why is Wake so fragile?
Bad luck to kill a seabird.
For all the abuse he hurls on Howard morning, noon, and night, Wake can't handle even the slightest conflict. One little tiff over something as stupid as whether Howard likes the way he cooks lobster leads to this.
Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow!
The man calls down a thunderous litany of sea curses on Howard in a tirade that goes on for nearly 2% of the movie's entire runtime. Look at his eyes. He never blinks once. Just a terrible, frightening rage that Willem Dafoe plays perfectly. Not just because of how powerful the monologue is, but also because of how sad he starts to seem halfway through. When the camera cuts back to Howard's reaction, you can see Wake's fist is shaking. He's so furious and so hurt. If he wasn't screaming, you get the sense that he'd be crying. For all of Wake's delusions of absolute power, the light makes him small. When he's up there, he becomes naked and helpless before it. It turns him into the lazy good-for-nothing that he accuses Howard of being. And this supposed power isolates him from his only potential friend. Howard goes crazy in this movie, but Wake was crazy from the start. Even after being buried alive, he can't just sit there and let Howard have his way with the light for even a moment.
The light belongs to me!
So he chases it to his death, a sailor lured by a siren into hazardous waters. By the end of the movie, this power struggle totally wrecks the place they're there to maintain. A lighthouse is supposed to be a beacon of safety in an untamable climate, but this lighthouse only leads the way to madness. When Howard looks at the light from afar, he sees what Wake sees, what the light wants them to see. The light clearly doesn't save anybody, but what are they even trying to be saved from? The light is also pretty heavily associated with sex and booze. Both men think about the light while they compulsively masturbate. And I think it's interesting that Howard has to yank his hog in a dark shed of shame, while Wake jacks off like a king on top of the world. And as for the booze...
Boredom makes men to villains. The only medicine is drink. Keeps them sailors happy, keeps them calm, keeps them stupid.
I think it's really interesting that Wake talks so strategically about booze here, especially since the first thing he ever does with Howard is try to insist on him drinking. And then when he does get him to drink, he gives him 3 shots in less than half a minute. Both sex and this much drinking is a kind of death, a shutting down of the brain. You only drink that much when you want to forget yourself. Which makes sense because they spend all their time lying to each other about who they really are. I do think Howard wants to be saved by the light, but Wake wants to become the light, to disappear into it. We see clues of this all the way back to when he's hidden by the support beam during his first power fart. It's almost as if the island itself is farting in Howard's face. And later, when Howard spills his beans...
How else am I going to find respectable work?
This might be the most that Howard ever trusts Wake. And then, in the very next cut, Wake has disappeared. The camera tours the workplace with Wake's ghostly voice echoing as if he has become the lighthouse. Or maybe more importantly, he's become the only part of his life where he feels powerful. Everything human has vanished. But all this goes out the window when Howard tries to escape the island shortly after.
Don't leave me!
Suddenly, he's not a boss anymore. Suddenly, he's just a lonely human being who doesn't want to be left behind.
Don't leave me!
But then, when he drives the axe through the dinner table, their only somewhat neutral gathering place, he's the boss again.
You're abandoning your post.
This kind of schizophrenia of friend or boss is what makes Wake so frustrating. He switches between the two whenever it suits him.
Don't leave me! You're abandoning your post. Don't you trust me, Tommy? Deducted from your pay.
Maybe Wake gets Howard drunk to keep him stupid, but I think he needs to keep himself stupid too. When they're drunk, they're not just forgetting themselves. When they're drunk, they can forget that they're basically enemies. It's the only way they know how to feel less lonely. What they don't quite realize is loneliness is what they need salvation from the most. They just have no idea how to express it because they're 19th century men, but especially because Wake clings to so much power over Howard. The only thing they know how to share is booze.
I trust you. No. I trust you.
Could I talk to your husband?
No, but there's something I would just love to say to you. Aren't you guys happy working at the Hormel plant?
Under the current conditions, no.
When we were your age, we weren't making even what you were.
Then give us a fair shake like you got a fair shake.
We're living in an era of movies where the theme of revenge against the rich is more popular than ever. Parasite, Snowpiercer, Ready or Not, Knives Out, Get Out, Us, Joker, The Hunger Games, Rango, Django Unchained, Ex Machina, Elysium, The Hunt, Sorry to Bother You. But in all these movies, there's this wide chasm between the rich and the poor. They might as well be from different planets. The lighthouse feels different. Howard and Wake are the same. They're both blue-collar guys who have lived hard lives. They break bread together. They even have the same first name.
Sometime soon I'll raise my own roof. Somewhere up country. No one to tell me what for.
This is sort of what Wake has already achieved for himself. In a way, Wake is as successful as Howard will ever be. The ultra-rich are nowhere to be found, but on the island, Wake can play God. And because they're both portrayed as so equally human, the power that Wake wields feels completely ridiculous. And it doesn't make Howard out to be a downtrodden hero either. He beats Wake to a pulp and then treats him like a literal animal. And it's not just revenge either. He really seems to enjoy being in charge and bossing Wake around. As the YouTube channel K and Skittles points out, they are two parts of the same cycle. Which is why I'm going to stop calling them Thomas Howard and Thomas Wake now, and instead call them by how they're referred to in the script, young and old. If you want to stretch this analogy a step further, I think the seagulls carrying the souls of the dead sailors could be seen as the third and final part of the cycle. Only after death do workers achieve the same freedom they were promised, and even then they use that freedom to torment the same powerless people that they used to be. It's like heaven for poor people as designed by rich people. If you look at the ending through this interpretation, Young is literally being eaten alive by the American dream. The movie suggests that when we talk about the evils of the rich, we should also confront the fact that these systems that reward greed and dominance were born out of a lust lurking within all of us. Class and capitalism don't create corruption spontaneously. They feed an idiot hunger that's already there. Social psychologist Paul Piff and his colleagues over at UC Berkeley did this really cool study where they took 100 pairs of strangers from varying economic backgrounds and had them all play each other in the most terrifying game ever created. Except, in this game of Monopoly, one of the players was given twice as much money and was allowed to roll 2 dice instead of 1.
We saw very notable differences and dramatic differences begin to emerge between the two players. The rich player started to move around the board louder. We were more likely to see signs of dominance and nonverbal signs of displays of power.
The more privileged player started to become increasingly smug about their inevitable dominance, even as they became less sensitive to the plight of the poorer player.
That's money. I have money for everything. Notice, you owe me $24. Lose all your money, so I'll buy it. I have so much money. I have so much money, it takes me forever.
I'm gonna buy out this whole board.
You're gonna run out of money soon. I'm pretty much untouchable at this point.
And when the rich players talked about why they'd inevitably won in this rigged game of Monopoly, they talked about what they'd done to buy those different properties and earn their success in the game. And they became far less attuned to all those different features of the situation that had randomly gotten them into that privileged position in the first place.
That is the lie of the lighthouse. It's the lie that, as the boss, Old deserves to treat Young this way. As, you know, if he's the boss, that means he must be a more productive worker, or he's smarter, or he works harder, when really he probably just aged into that job. Look at this shot of Old writing in his logbook, dotting an I with delicious glee. He's dumping all over Young, not because he has to, but because he enjoys it. Old always has to win. What's kind of wild is that the entries in the logbook very well may not be lies, but I think we all instinctively felt this palpable sense of betrayal here, right? Because Young doesn't get to write a report on Old. And as far as we can tell, Old does far less and far easier work. But Old's word is law. He is a boss because he is great, and if he is great, he can never be wrong. Old can accuse Young of anything and get away with it, whether it's smearing him in the logbook or telling him he didn't clean the floors when he actually did. Old has a monologue that got cut from the script before filming that would have taken place right before the big strangle fight. It goes like this.
"'Twas ye that damned us, dog, 'twas ye! Will you do what you wish you done to old Winslow? Would ye best me then? If you break, I win. If I break ye, I still win. I always win because you're less a man than I, and damn's the rules of nature, damn's truth! I am truth. I make the truth as I see fit. Me! And the truth is that you're a nuttin' Tommy Tom. A nuttin' but a dog what thinks he's the master when he pulls on his master's leash. Well, if you pull on my leash, I'll choke ye, Thomas Howard. I'll strangle ye. For Winslow were right. You're a dog, Thomas. A filthy dog. A dog!
I am truth. Funny how this would have been said right before all of the lies in Young's head attack him, even as he attacks Old. The lies lurking in his past, which insist on intruding into the present. The seductive lie of the lighthouse. Old's lies that his authority grants him some divine right. And then, all this artifice vanishes as the great god boss man pleads with Young to see him instead as a human begging for his life. But at this point, the damage has been done. Young is God now. But where does the light fit into all this? What is the light? A lot of folks are attaching spiritual interpretations onto the light, and I do understand that. There's a lot of mythological imagery flying around this movie. Even the opening shot reminds me of when God separates the sea and sky on the second day of creation in the book of Genesis. But I think that's just what the light wants us to think. These interpretations irk me because it suggests that some actual god or power casts Young out because he's unworthy, which suggests that somehow Old is worthy. Really, these men's lives are defined by an absence of spirituality. Or maybe I should say an absence of purpose outside of their jobs. They don't seem to have any friends or family waiting for them back home. Their only purpose is maintaining this imaginary order of who's on top. And what a sad, purposeless purpose that is. The light is only the illusion of the power of the gods. And don't get me wrong, illusion might be the most powerful thing in the world. Money is not real. Authority is not real. Neither is freedom or culture. It's all just symbolism. And symbolism is only as powerful or powerless as how many people believe in it. Alan Watts has this great quote that goes,
"The common error of ordinary religious practice is to mistake the symbol for the reality, to look at the finger pointing the way, and then to suck it for comfort rather than follow it."
And I think that's what's happening with this damn light. Because of that light, there is no truth. Just like the Greek tale of Sisyphus, who is doomed to push a boulder up a mountain, watch it roll back down, and then push it up again. There's no reason for Young to work so much while Old works so little. This futility reminds me a lot of the work of the great absurdist playwright Samuel Beckett. Absurdism is a philosophy and artistic movement that grapples with the conflict between humanity's obsession with purpose and the indifferent chaos of life.
Old Endgame, last of old. Play and lose and have done with losing.
While most philosophies try to extract meaning or comfort out of that pointlessness, absurdism encourages one to just admit that your life will have no lasting impact on the world and to live fully anyway out of sheer stubborn spite. But absurdist art often differs with the philosophy in that it really dwells on how impossible or empty that can feel. Samuel Beckett's characters live in that confusion. Just about all of them are stuck somehow. Just like Young is waiting for the tender boat to come save him and also waiting to pay his dues so that one day he might be treated like a human being. Beckett's characters also wait for something that, by the end of his plays, never comes.
Let's go. We can't. Why not? We're waiting for Godot. Oh, yes. Let's wait and see what he says. Who? Godot. Ah, yes. Let's go. We can't. Why not? We're waiting for Godot. Oh, yes. Yes. In this immense confusion, one thing alone is clear. We are waiting for Godot to come. Oh, yes.
But my favorite has to be Endgame, where the characters are waiting for nothing. It's apparently the end of the world. The two main characters are Ham, who's a blind man in a wheelchair, and Clove, who's younger and follows all of Ham's pointless orders.
And more or less in the center.
I'd say so.
Yes, say so. Put me right in the center.
Let's go and get the tape.
Roughly. Bang in the center.
There.
I feel a little too far to the left. Now I feel a little too far to the right. I feel a little too far forward. Now I feel a little too far back. Don't stay there, you give me the shivers.
Just like when Old forces Young to scrub the floors again, Ham's orders aren't really adding value to any larger goal. It's just that cruelty and submission are what they're used to. It's the only way they know how to pass the time.
Do this, do that, and I do it. I never refuse. Why?
You're not able to.
So I won't do it anymore.
You won't be able to anymore.
Unlike Young, Clove doesn't try for a better future, but he does eventually try for a different one. Throughout the play, Clove has been threatening to leave Ham forever, but it always sounds like an empty threat that's been repeated hundreds of times before.
Then I'll leave you.
You can't leave us.
Then I shan't leave you.
But at the end, he's all packed up and ready to go. Ham calls for him.
Clove!
He doesn't answer.
No? Yeah.
He just watches, disobeying at last. Life will be just as meaningless out in the wastelands of the world as it is in here, so we may as well go be meaningless somewhere else.
I open the door of the cell and go. I am so bowed I only see my feet. If I open my eyes, and between my legs a little trail of black dust. I say to myself that the earth is extinguished, though I never saw it lit. It's easy, going. When I fall, I'll weep for happiness.
But I would say that Old and Young are absurdist victims. They try to force meaning onto a meaningless world. Just like Beckett's characters, they busy themselves with repetitive tasks, all to feed this light that's only lighting the way for other people. Rather than struggling together, they cling to that light. What do I see in the light? I see promises. Promises of income as liquid as my spent sweat. A promise that I'm illuminated. My misery has been seen by God or Triton or Jeff Bezos, and I'll be rewarded. The light promises me that I'll get what I deserve. The light promises that all this won't be for nothing. That time my boss made me paint on top of a 30-foot metal ladder with thunder cracking over my head wasn't for nothing. That time I got fired from Kroger for leaving my shift because the big manager didn't know that my middle manager had let me go on break wasn't for nothing. One day, it'll all be worth it. Maybe. But, you know, you can't eat promises. You can't spend them. I think I know what young Thomas found so funny during his last moments with the light. After all these promises, all these sacrifices, all the ways that he let these awful workplaces corrupt his soul and shatter his sanity, he finally crawled his way up to the top, only to discover the light is nothing. I clean apartments and houses for a living. And, you know, it doesn't pay all that much, but I do enjoy the work. It feels good to come into someone's home and help them out when they're feeling overwhelmed by a big mess. You know, it's good, honest work. But the work does not like me back. Even though I work for them full time, my employer does not claim me as their employee because then they'd have to pay me benefits. I don't even work for a person. I work for an app. I don't even know the people that I work for. I couldn't get in touch with them if I tried. One negative review is enough to wreck my whole cash flow for a month until I can build my ratings back up again. I've had people with 4-story townhouses in Los Angeles, multi-million-dollar townhouses, demand that I give them a $50 discount because their ancient vacuum finally died while I was using it. And I had to just agree because I knew that my boss, who isn't a boss, would not have my back. Like I said, you know, I do enjoy the work, but sometimes when I'm driving home after a long, hard shift, passing all these houses that I know my income can never afford. Yeah, I'm not even talking about those houses. Sometimes when I drive home, passing all these houses that I know my income can never afford, feeling guilty because I spent $5 instead of $3 at Taco Bell, I can't help but feel this awful shame. The thought just hits me again and again. I am so tired of being poor. So I can only imagine how tired Young must be. How desperate to think that his squalor has a purpose, that his sacrifices were an investment instead of a cruel waste. Even when Young sees that the light is nothing but a simple flame, he worships it so devoutly that he sticks his hand inside.
Although maybe at the end he understands. When your lifetime of toil is rewarded with more pain, I suppose there's nothing left to do but laugh. In class struggle type movies, the moment when the poor attack their oppressors is a moment of righteous vindication. But here, it's just two drunks rolling around on the floor over a lie that neither of them needs. It's so easy to imagine a world where none of this happened and everyone went home happy, where old cooperates instead of dominates, where the light illuminates instead of burns, a world where bosses understand that even if you can convince a man he is a dog that is beaten and caged long enough eventually bites back. A workplace that worships competition will always become a war!
How else are we going to find respectable work? Hey there, my fellow acolytes. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I love making these horror movie deep dives, and A big thank you to everyone who checked out the first video in this new format. It was about Midsommar, especially those of you who wrote just the kindest, most glowing comments. They just keep pouring in. I feel like we already have a little community here, and a few of you even gave a financial donation on my PayPal, which just blew my mind. You know, like I had 100 subscribers last May, so I wasn't really expecting much of anything this early. So, you know, COVID really hit my cleaning business hard. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you want to support my work further, the link is in the description. Every little bit helps. If you like this video, I want to mention again the YouTube channel Kay and Skittles. They just have one of the best video essays about the lighthouse that I found in my research. I feel like a lot of times the conversation around this movie has just been like, oh, that's an allusion to Sisyphus. That's an allusion to Prometheus. The light is the power of the gods, or purgatory, without really being bold or thorough enough to go into detail about what they think those metaphors are actually trying to say. And Kay and Skittles really, you know, they go deep into the film's themes of toxic masculinity, and coincidentally, they actually just did a video on Midsommar, which analyzes the Hargas through the lens of fascism and white supremacy. Both of their videos are really good companion pieces to mine, I think, and they have a really cool ferret. So yeah, you should check them out. Now, if you're interested in getting into Samuel Beckett after seeing my video, obviously you can't see any of his plays right now, but the footage I used was from this project called Beckett on Film, which adapted all of his stuff onto the screen. Some of them are better than others. I think the cinematography and the Waiting for Godot one kind of sucks the life out of it, but the Endgame one is really good, and if you want Beckett horror, then you want to check out Not I. It's this short one. I used some footage in this video of it. It's just a black background and a mouth just babbling manically for 11 minutes of this weirdly musical monologue of just pure anxiety. It's great. It's awful. It's great. My next video is going to be about the Jeff Vandermeer book and Alex Garland film Annihilation. Cannot wait for that. Probably going to be about 2 months again. And in the meantime, hit me up on Twitter. I'll be there, and I'll see you there, hopefully. Thanks for watching.